We're going to go.
Let's go.
There was a show about 2 shows back where we had a gentleman called Sorin in, and we promised you episode 2 with him, and he is here with us today. So 50 and Coping welcomes you back.
Thank you for having me again.
It's a pleasure. Well, you've been on your travels and you've done some pretty epic things.
I did. I went to Estonia where I did a few events. Initially, I went there to do a public speaking gig, but I ended up doing a few more things last minute because I enjoy the challenge, and I tend to, being the wild card type of individual just allows me to adapt last minute to things, and that was fun because I did something extremely challenging for me to do a performance, because I never did any sort of acting or anything else like that, and on a short notice to get up on main stage to do the opening ceremony, and people giving the kid with PTSD real sharp axes was an interesting choice, but it worked out fine. And
so you were there to give a keynote speech or something like that, and then they ended up asking you to do the opening thing.
Yeah, because there was another event before in a Viking village where I ended up hosting an axe throwing stuff and just talking to people, and then doing a fireside chat and kind of going last minute on things. And then I also found out, they were like, oh, you want to do this too? And because it was Estonia is the place where the Vikings started and the Viking era ended, because the Norwegians got Christianized. So really the last Vikings were still in Estonia. So I guess based on how I look, they wanted to make something that had that, Viking spirit to it.
I get that.
And I was like, oh, you want to do it Viking? I made it a bit more grimy and real.
Did they have any concept of who they were asking in reality to do this? Because you're never going to do something half-assed. You're never going to go, I'm going to bring on, can you give me a rubber axe?
I think that Timu, the person behind HoloLife Summit, he's also a genius, but an insane one. Like, we are weirdly similar, but different. Like, he's the AI tech genius and I am this human element. Like, together it was actually a pleasant surprise that we are able to work with each other, because we are rather big characters, and from the outside, a lot of people wouldn't expect us to get along. But in reality, although we have our quirks, we have the similarity of respecting competence and diversity of thought. So there was no, challenging of egos, and realizing how both can, help each other and learn from each other. And that made it very easy, because I think in his, as they say, with you can't have genius without a touch of madness. And I think in his madness was, if someone's going to do it, it's going to be this guy. And I love the responsibility of it. I also discovered or rediscovered parts of myself by challenging something that, for me, I thought it was impossible, because even when I do my keynotes or any sort of talks or videos online, I never have a script. I can't. It feels like I'm being pushed into a fire. Like, it's bad. I immediately get angry. And
do you think that's because the script's telling you what to do?
Even I write the script. I can't do it.
No, I can't. He will tell you. Oh, I just battered the microphone. He will tell you that I cannot, and I'm absolutely shit at running from a script.
Yeah, but I think it's an adaptation to our environment. I've tried to observe it enough. From, you can call it trust issues. You can call it our prefrontal cortex being, changing our development based on environment, and rather than, because really the role of the prefrontal cortex that develops later, and that's why I finishes developing at 25, is to learn the rules of your environment in order for you to fit in and repeat them and so on. But if your environment, it's not reliable and you don't want to replicate that, I think from nature's perspective, it kind of just puts a block on them, like, you're going to have to figure a different way because you shouldn't repeat this pattern.
Right.
And I think based on my developmental years, and maybe yours too, it feels like I have a lot of my points put in creativity and problem solving and a complete rejection of rules.
Yep.
And although, you know, and that makes me very valuable in the moment, right? Yes, I can't compete with people getting on stage, doing scripts and getting prepared, but those people can't do what I do because I do it on the spot. So funny enough, the first time I tried to do a public speaking thing, which was last year, the title of it, Turning Your Struggle into Your Superpower. Like, for me, my inability to do what I'm told and follow rules and so on, that makes me, you know, unlikely to be a everyday civilian. Also, it's why I am successful in what I do, and that's why we're laughing with, as Timu's developing an AI and so on. I'm like, if when electricity is gone, I will take over the world. Right? Like, you all rely on me. When you can't, chat GPT things, you can't Google your answers, because my whole, I guess, passion or drive is to try to create as a comprehensive map of the world of human behaviors. I think for me is one thing that maybe I'm rejecting because I grew up around, arrogant, narcissistic type of individuals, and even seeing the world around me where everyone, knows things but understand very little.
Yep.
And I think there's a very big difference between knowing and understanding things. And for me, I need to understand things, and in order to understand things, I need to experience them. Like, even when it comes to, and it sounds ridiculous to say it out loud, the creative project that is my ever-evolving aesthetics, in order for me to understand how it is to be attractive and be seen as that, to truly have empathy for it, I had to become that. Although I could rely on my brain and achieve success just by that, but I wouldn't be able to understand the world from this point of view if I didn't experience this one too. And that's where, always looking for things that seem very out there, like, oh, I'm gonna, orchestrate a little play and try to tell a story using movement and try to play in it and make it real enough that I can actually get an emotional response out of people. Right. And for me, it felt like I can't perform, but I want to understand, and I observed enough people doing it to understand the outcome. And I, in a way, cheated, if you want to say that, by playing the character I played for a few decades, which is the jolly psycho. I knew the only way that I can do it is still not really acting.
It's got to be what you know.
Yes, I'm like, oh, I can't be the cool, angry for me, because my level of aggression was always with a smile on my face and kind of the jolly psycho type of stuff. So I created the narrative based on one thing that I could dip my feet into, stress testing all the PTSD elements of my life, but in a way that feels more natural to me. And since I was not concerned about how I look, and it was about doing a good job for the people that were watching it, kind of creating an experience for people there and highlighting the talented, skilled people that were part of this, it was the fact that I was trusted with kind of creating a narrative and doing it in a way that is a bit more my way is how I part-time performed and part-time just did the thing I'm naturally inclined to do when it comes to a violent performance, which is kind of
when you look at that, if you I don't know, the thing that pops into my head is there was a guy called Tony Sirico who played Pawnee Walnuts, right, in The Sopranos, right, The Sopranos, with that big thing, and basically he used to be a gangster. So then who's going to be the best at being a gangster on film? A fucking gangster, right? He knows it. His affectations aren't fake, they're real. And that blows back to you and I talking about the reality of being on the internet and in front of people and showing yourself in a place of truth. People believe it. So you're going on, right, so you want me to swing an axe, right, and you want me to be a psychopath, and we're going to do that, and you're like, yeah, all right, I can do that. And you're not kidding anybody. This isn't an act. I can do this. Yeah, thanks. The only negative to that is your level of reaction to regressing. That could have gone wrong, right?
Yeah, well, that was, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, because I felt fear for the first time in years. And I think right. You have to hold on to that. That literally, that's the second time I've heard you say that today, just for clarity. But that in itself, right? We all feel fear all the time. You don't. There's nothing in this for you to fear. In this one situation, you do. Yeah, because I think I don't know. I think a big part of who I was even before, the thing that has brought me a degree of infamous into a different world was the fact that I didn't care if I died. And right now, I only care if I die from the perspective of the responsibilities I took for the people around me and the service that I committed to. So it's not necessarily a sense of self-preservation, is I need to care for my life in order for me to continue doing the service I committed to.
Yep.
But in this case, it was the fear of, we had a few hours to practice the sequences, and I think a big part, since I almost lost an eye and had my skull cracked by a crowbar, which now I have a cool scar from. Also, it's one of my triggers when things like sharp things or objects come towards me, and like it kind of gets me into autopilot. And doing the practice bit, there were elements of her swinging the sword at me where I would slowly lose grip of control and go into like, this is an efficient way to just kill someone, and I'm like, this is play fighting. This is play fighting.
It's, I mean, there's a lot of people who won't understand that, but right. So I'm gonna spell this out, right? When you're in a fighting situation, okay, it's not Hollywood. It's not a position of I'm going to do this, then we're going to do that, and then we'll do Queensberry Rules boxing, and everyone will be fine. It's I'm going to step to the right now because that's the last thought I have, right? Because I'm stepping to the right to put myself in a fight position, and I don't think about anything because I know what to do. Yeah,
it's what a lot of people in the well-being world call the flow state. Like for me, that was the in those environments where I would reach a point of flow where there was no consciousness. It was purely just animal reactions, just seeing the smallest part of someone's shoulder move, knowing that they are orchestrating to move one side, and immediately just go in. There's no time to think.
It's instinct, isn't it?
It's just simply in that moment, based on your awareness of your capabilities and truly kind of immersing yourself into that person's body and mind in order for you to anticipate the next move, and just because it is the reality of I do not have half a second to question this, because that half a second can cost me my life. So it is go, and go in a very effective way. And that doesn't necessarily translate very well into, acting or performance or discipline fighting, because it was rather interesting to see, although I worked for a few years now trying to kind of maintain a balance to remain conscious, it slipped. It kept slipping slightly. And, having that, and also knowing there's the pressure of the stage, and, me challenging myself to also do a good job, because I think the reason why I do a good job in everything I decide to do is not because I want people to like me, is because I want to be able to respect myself. I think part of the confidence and often perceived arrogance I have is based in my receipts of competence. Like, I work at the standard of myself. I don't care if this is too much for more people. I'm like, I could just get away doing the bare minimum. It's more like I need to be able to tell myself that I really tried. I showed up.
You've done the best you could. Yeah.
Because it feels a representation of my own self-respect. It's not about wanting the respect of others. Like, I somehow, the hardest person to earn the respect from is myself if I try to cut corners or anything else. And this is something I learned, and I wish people would really recognize that no one gets away with anything, and there's no shortcuts in nature. Like, although you think you can, like, sneak or trick someone, like, eventually you still have to deal with yourself. And the only way that I can maintain a degree of mental clarity and, be able to go to bed despite of all the demons in my head is knowing that I did my best to show up no matter the circumstances.
And is that all part of your commitment to change your life and do good? Is it all part of that, or has that self-respect always been there, that need for?
I think it starts. It starts from it's more of a project, although it sounds a bit disconnected and sociopathic when I say it out loud.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, but it's when I, after the age of 25, when, I tried to kill myself and I didn't, I had to accept that I killed that person, and the agreement I made with myself on me sticking around was, one, to only do what feels right for me and authentic to me. And I objectively looked at myself, and mentally, physically, spiritually, I was a -3. Aesthetics wise, like nothing, no metric of human existence really I was doing not even close to average in. And that made it exciting to me, because I'm like, ooh, I wonder what happens if I try to become an unrealistic standard for, what a man can be. From the point of the quality of my relationship, my impact on my community, my, pattern recognition and all that's called intelligence, emotional intelligence, the superficial creativity and aesthetics part. I'm like, because ultimately my purpose and the thing that drives me is to give people an opportunity I was never given. And in order for me, and it kind of goes back to the difference between knowing and understanding things, in order for me to have the audacity to be able to give someone a piece of advice, I have to give it from a point of understanding. And in order for me to understand it, I have to live it.
So from experience?
Yeah, like
understood, applied knowledge.
I can't come here at a time I was 47% body fat and try to tell you the importance of eating right. Like, it's just, I just can't. I have to live it.
Yeah.
Like, in order for me to be able to show up and say things and the way I say them, And that's why I have to push this project that combines my passion of trying to understand the world around and what it is about the human experience and how to get the most out of it. And the only way I can get that understanding is by experiencing it. So yes, you know.
I need to ask this question before my brain explodes. So you said something there, you said that you killed that person obviously when you committed suicide you did not die. But there was
a ghost.
Yeah. Okay, that would be messed up. But there was a death, right? There was a death. There was a death of that.
It took me about
gangster.
2 weeks. Really, when I woke up, I kind of went a bit psychotic for about 2 weeks, and I would just be in an expensive suit around London, part-time homeless, just because there was a new low, like failing at that, because I planned it. This was not an emotional decision. I said my goodbyes. It was a conscious decision based on how competent I got at being the bad guy. I'm like, considering that I'm 25 years old, I don't think someone with my level of creativity and brain should also be ruthless, because I don't think the world needs more of that, because I'm a product of those people. And I try to provide opportunities to people around, and I realized the more money we made and so on, that people didn't want to change and get out. I was actually enabling. And although you know that in part of that world, violence, it seems unavoidable, no matter how much you try to avoid things, and overdoses and prison and people dying, and feeling that you are part of enabling that. There's no amount of gaslighting that you can do that I'm actually trying to help, because that's when I developed the number one rule of helping people, is that you cannot help someone that doesn't want to be helped. So I needed to step away from that, and I didn't know any other way to live, and based on who I was and so on, no one was really willing to give me a chance either. So, because no one seemed to understand anything. And when I made a decision and I acted on it, and then I woke up 2 days later, first, you know, it was the funny part now of like, I wonder who was right, which afterlife is this? And then it was the realization of like, oh shit, I'm in this purgatory. Like, I failed at this thing. I'm like, what do I do now? And
I failed at what thing?
At the whole, like the whole part of just leaving.
So you failed. You failed at killing yourself.
Yeah, and it was. It's not even that. Oh, I'm relieved that, you know, I survived. Oh, what was I thinking? It was, fuck. Like, what do I do now? And it was like, I can't go back. And I looked around and looked at people around, and it's still, I was like, who am I outside of all of this? And the only way that I could really go from this psychotic rumination of just not wanting to be here is to accept, and that person of me is just dead. And I now get to go back to being a child and relive my teenage years, where I have to go on to an inwards journey of discovering who I am. And that was really how it all started. It was just, I just wanted to know who I am outside of what I became.
Is there a way, I mean, is there a way of finding that out for reality? Because obviously you've reached that point where you've made that decision to end your life because your life was not going anywhere, or you know, those feelings are all put together. And you talked about, you know, the way that you could be perceived as, you know, one of the, I can't think of the word now, I've gone completely blank, but somebody who shows emotion but has none, really. you know, and you come across, but you are now in this world. You've arrived again in a world you didn't expect to be in, and you made a conscious decision to find out who you really are, because you'd always been an affectation of your surroundings.
Yeah, I think.
Is that freeing or is that fucking terrifying?
Oh, it's terrifying.
Right. Okay.
It's definitely terrifying.
Yeah.
Because it's the simple part, I think, why a lot of people end up not changing, and it's the sunk cost fallacy.
Which is?
The humans tend to commit to something and stick to it based on the investment they already have in it.
Okay. They've gone too far, they're not going back.
And considering that I started hustling from the age of 8, and that's what I knew, and I finally became good at it.
Mm.
And for me, considering that my first job after that was to pick boxes for a supermarket in a warehouse on a night shift, going from making 20 grand months to minimum wage, with, you know, being managed by people that were just victims to me.
Yep.
And having to participate into this weird social games, and you know, you need a CV, and you need to, you know, someone calling you, I'm like, you've been 2 minutes late on your break, type of stuff. I was like, you know I could kill you, right? And then I'm like, oh, right? And then I was like, oh shit, I committed to this thing because I want to learn and kind of put myself, but you constantly have, although it took me a while to really acknowledge that person is dead, because being in this weird crane, kind of just moving boxes and dealing with the frustrations of being surrounded by, you know, average individuals, that knowing that what I could do and doing it for minimum wage, it's kind of it was a constant reminder, but it was why, funny enough, I ended up breaking all of the performance records, because for me, I'm like, I'll gamify this. It was a gold bonus for like 200 boxes an hour. We get another £2 an hour bonus.
Right.
And it was like 190 for silver, 180 for bronze. On nights I averaged 330, where 350, where people would just stop at 215 maximum just to have a good average.
Yeah.
But I would just go try to make the process as engaging as possible, which in a matter of 11 months I became a recruitment consultant. I'm like, how do we get more of you? I'm like, well, you need to get rid of the drug testing.
Yes, you do.
And kind of just with this incessive, you know, kind of the true ego death element of like, if I think I'm better than this, I'll prove it. And I will enjoy this pursuit of starting from zero and with a disadvantage of starting late and everything else. It was a fun challenge now. I was like, I'm just going to do this while I'm doing all of this internal work on myself. And then I think my first project on myself, because I was 47% body fat, and I realized I had to like use my hands to get out of bed. I'm like, at 25, this shouldn't really be how I get up. I'm like, I need to figure out what is this, you know, how do I get rid of this thing? So, you know, I did what I guess I used to do in the past, because a way for me to kind of just escape some of the criminal activities was playing video games. And I ended up competing and being really good at them too in the past. And I treated it the same way, like really theory crafting and understanding the mechanics. And I kind of went to learning about human biology and nutrition up to a molecular level and everything else, and then applied that on myself as this experimental project, which worked. And then people are like, how do you do it? I'm like, I can, you know, this. I'm like, oh, it works. And I and then realized that all of a sudden a similar high I used to get from like drugs, it was, oh, I can just help people with these things. And now, like, I have this very, I think it's like having a really broken up car that you now put a lot of time in learning how the engine and everything. And I developed all these skills in trying to understand and play with this mechanism. And I'm like, oh, there is a lot of similarity in the biological mechanisms of humans, and I can just apply it on the people around, and I get this high from it of seeing people do better, and also realizing that happy, healthy people are just easier to be around. So I don't have to always be, wary of the police is going to come at the door, who's going to be volatile around me. So in this inwards journey to discover and try to improve myself, I developed a lot of skills that then became useful into creating an environment around myself that also gets the best out of me, because now I had a why I'm here.
Right.
And it was like, oh, I was not the only one that was never told, because although I had potentially, I didn't never truly have like a victim mentality, but I did feel like I was, I was not given a chance by my development. But then I realized that most people weren't. Like, most people go through education, they go through life, and they're actually not being taught anything about their mind, their bodies, and it's this weird. I've realized that the civilian world is more criminal than the criminal world.
Yeah.
The more I ended up working in the pharmaceutical industry, trying to like help and try to develop oncology medications, to realize that's worse than being a drug dealer. So I think it just gave me a why, and like, oh, like now these people are not even overt criminals, they are covert, and most individuals have not been given the opportunities to live a good life. So it's not just me, it's everyone to a certain extent, and the only thing that I have is a relative experience that I can now use as an advantage, because the way I see myself is as a scout. Like, I'm kind of the crazy one that's willing to go and see where the mines are and kind of tell people where's the safe way to go, because using this lack of fear of my life and being able to attribute value to that by just using the fact that I'm not so risk adverse, and I'm willing to experiment, and I'm willing to challenge things, and kind of argue and stand for something. And I'm like, all of these things that made me part of the problem somehow now made me part of the solution. Because in order for humans to stay humans, they need a monster, and I just found a why. Like, I can justify the pain the child version of me did by trying to provide others with answers or understanding that I wish someone gave me, so I wouldn't have to go as far as having to kill myself in order to realize that.
Can I just look at the word arrogance, because you said there's perception of you being arrogant, and to be honest, I mean, I know you, there is the least amount of arrogance in you. Arrogance is, right, when you are giving it the big one, right? You are saying about what's going on, but you haven't done any work, you haven't gone anywhere, you haven't done anything, but you are so self-convinced that what you're saying is right. And arrogance is a human perception of being right. You don't have that.
Oh, I said perceived arrogance.
Yeah, no, that's exactly.
Yeah, because it's simply, I always had a certain attitude, even if it's just simply, I only talk about things that I have a sense of understanding them and experiencing them. And based on, again, this weird challenge that I set for myself, like someone that looks like me and gets to, you know, have tattooed hands and be creative and be childish shouldn't also be able to hang out with like scientists and challenge their way of thinking, or kind of like it messes up with humans. And also considering that I'm only 34 years old, and I'm like, who do you think you are? Because unless you have context, which you do have, the fact that I'm kind of relaxed because I don't feel the need to, you know, go around, because I'm just not scared. And I will make jokes, and I'm gonna, you know, poke and prod and kind of say things and challenge things. It's something that really was on my mind in the past week, and I talked to a bunch of people, because part of that human need, the need for belonging, meaning, I think it's one of the most misunderstood parts in this current culture, because people try to find this sense of belonging and community by being part of a group, by associating themselves, slapping a label based on their diagnosis, based on their sexuality, or I don't know, whatever it is. But that's actually counterproductive in you actually getting a sense of belonging, because the only way for you to secure your position in a group is to do it as your authentic self, because you are the only one that can do you. So if you find something you are good at and find a way to provide value to a group of a community as yourself, that's the only way you can secure and have a sense of, you know, security. Because if you just go for the instant gratifying part of, I don't know, pronouns or whatever people want to associate themselves with, you are now one of many, therefore easily replaceable. So you always have a sense of insecurity about your position in the world or in the group, because
you know it's not based on a position of knowledge or power or anything.
Yeah, it's not about you. It's about kind of just you tagging along. And if you think again at animals and like herd animals, they never. There's a reason why then, you know, zebras technically, if they had the ability to do a degree of cognitive thinking, they would come together and stop the lion while they're sleeping, and wouldn't have a lion problem.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's more of them. But because they're always in this anxious state, and based on their diet and everything else, they just don't have the capacity of doing this planned thinking as predators would. They have a bit more time to rest, and, you know, rest and digest is also, if you think about digesting experiences, and, you know, contemplating on things and planning. And if you're always kind of part of a herd, and you're always kind of worried about being with the herd, because if you step away from it, now you're vulnerable or being left behind, you always end up having this constant sense of insecurity, because, you know, the one separated from the herd is always the one that gets hunted down. But you also end up not evolving and being able to have a degree of self-reliance, a real sense of safety.
Yeah. If you look at special forces units, right? Every single one of those people in those are pushy, fucking self-believing individuals. But that does not detract from the fact they are in this cohesive team. And the reason the team works is because all of those self-respecting individuals have a part to play. And they understand that the other people in that do not detract from them and their abilities. They push them forward, because as a unit of pushy, self-respecting individuals, that cohesion comes together harder.
That is the secret of human success.
Yeah.
As a result of our weakness as individuals, because humans are incredibly weak, you know, There's no person, I make fun of people and say, I'm strongly dependent. You're not independent. Like something in your life, a tool or something was made by someone else. You're not independent. The likelihood of you just going and eating raw food in the forest without anything being made by someone else, it's more likely zero. So shut up. Right? Like you are not. Like the thing that made humans human is our weakness, and the thing that allowed humanity to develop is our understanding of the division of labor, and understanding that within a community, having an individual role and using your strengths or talents to serve the people around you and having these synergetic relationships, that's how you develop, grow, improve, and also have a sense of safety within the group. So yes, if you really think about the perception of an engineer in a big London company or a baker in a small village, that baker tends to have, although maybe a tenth of the engineer in London salary, a better sense of belonging and security in their community because he matters. One of the 45 engineers in that office, you are
It's
replaceable.
disposable,
So
yeah.
you're always in this constant state of nervousness, which, funny enough, our whole economy runs on insecurity. Like
Yeah.
it's the main currency.
Isn't it true that humans worked much better when we were groups of relatively small groups of nomads, 150, 200 of us, because that society was there, and when it starts getting too big, that's when you start to get people that are disposable.
There's a part of it where 50 to 150 is our tribal numbers because those are our cognitive limitations of creating intimate relationships with individuals. But the secret of society was the introduction of fantasy. That the only thing that allows humans to come together in larger groups than 50 to 150, it's fantasy. Religion, ideologies, country, money, this belief that we can connect with that now allows us to have divisional labor with other people. So diversity ends up being very valuable from a perspective of diversity of thought, but really what cannot be diverse is the fantasy. We have to be united by one particular fantasy. We have to have the same fantasy. That's why, you know, if you look at the biggest empires, we're always drawn, you know, around a religion or an idea. Like it's never based on tangible things. It's the push of a fantasy, and that fantasy allows human to now work together and fight together and share resources.
That fantasy is then manipulated by people who rise to the top for social control for more gain, right?
Yes.
Is that how that society's ended up?
It's, I think it's also, we shouldn't be delusional from the perspective. I think the idealistic view that people have of humans is also toxic, because evolutionarily we were, you know, on par with hyenas. We are opportunistic scavengers. Like for me, I have trust issues, but really what I trust is human nature. And that's why I can't be surprised if you act as your biological hardware. Like if you had some software upgrades, you can impress me by making conscious decisions and so on. But considering that that is less and less valued in today's world, because it's just easier to, you know, extract resources. You know, if you think of factory farmed animals, or if you look at, you know, London tube commuters, you kind of see them like, oh, there's a bit of similarity in this extraction of resources from certain things without actually having a sense of freedom or belonging, and ends up being this rotating pursuit of dopamine. Because in order for us to have a genuine sense of fulfillment, and I can give drugs as an example because I have experience with them. Have you realized that cocaine is way more addictive than MDMA?
I took a lot more cocaine than I did MDMA. That's what I can tell you.
Right, but even if you look,
much.
do you know why? Have
No.
you? is cocaine and MDMA both release dopamine.
Mm.
But MDMA also releases serotonin. So in order for something to feel fulfilling, dopamine goes up and serotonin goes down, and then serotonin goes up and dopamine goes down. And that's the cycle of the, sympathetic and parasympathetic, which actually gives us a sense of fulfillment.
Yeah.
When you only do dopaminergic kind of exciting things like cocaine or sugar or pornography or anything, shopping, because dopamine is not necessarily a reward neurotransmitter, it's more of an anticipation of reward.
Yep.
And you end up on this endless pursuit of anticipating a reward where serotonin is being released through a conscious decision to be grateful for what you have, or actually finishing a project or solving a problem or helping someone in a community, which allows you to now recharge. Like, the role of serotonin is to almost blind you from seeing the next problem temporarily in order for you to be able to rest and digest. Because within the sympathetic nervous state, the fight or flight, that's why, if you think about it, it's more of an energy retention state. Like, you are getting ready for this emergency. Your alveoli, your visceral sac contracts, getting ready for impact, which collapses the alveoli, the sacs in your lungs. And the jittery feelings that come with stress, it's really just buildup of carbon dioxide in your system. You can make any person have a panic attack by giving them a pure inhale of carbon dioxide, because you end up doing a lot of shallow breaths, you're not breathing out, you're trying to oxygenate your brain in case of this emergency, and that buildup of carbon dioxide, it feels like you are suffocating, right? And you have restriction of blood to certain parts of your body, and always trying to keep energy for this emergency. So yes, that's where losing weight is harder if you're always stressed or not resting properly and so on, because the rest and digest part is where you now release energy, because you finally come, so that more is going to come, so you end up doing cellular repair, you end up replenishing and creating long-term memory as well, and you end up digesting or processing the experiences you had in order for you to extract value. That's why I always say that processed trauma turns into wisdom. Essentially, that's the role of trauma. It's a gift that came with our consciousness for us to really remember what happened during that rather dangerous encounter that really stressed us, in order for us to be able to go back at it in a state that we are a bit stronger and safer, and be able to relive the intensity of those informations, but now also be able to extract information out of it in order for you to inform your future decisions, to avoid getting yourself into a similar situation, and also to improve the likelihood of getting an outcome that is more desirable for you. Because long-term memory formation happens under two circumstances: trauma and genuine interest.
So when that's true. I mean, a lot of people say as you get older, you start to forget things. I'll tell you why I forget things: because they're not fucking important, right? So there's been a certain amount of trauma in my life, just like anyone. So, but when you have the ability or the opportunity to look through on that trauma, you can learn how not to let that guide you in the same direction again. So you can learn from yourself. And the important part, it certainly is self-awareness, to the point where you understand that your search for knowledge, your search for actual information, is what enables growth. And I think the biggest part of your journey in a front-facing way is you work harder than anyone I've ever met, right, to get where you're going. Now, where you're going after your suicide was to rebuild, to do all that, but then you went, right, I tell you what, I'm doing this shitty job, right, and instead of killing that middle manager, because that's easy, I'm going to make everyone else understand how fucking easy this is by doing it, streamlining it, doing all that. You talked about your freedom from the cotton place.
Yeah.
That was part of you then. You knew that you could get your freedom because you could do this better than anybody else. So you're still drawing on your past life, but this new life, you got to live it from a base level.
Wait, you know what it is? Because every motherfucker says this, but they don't live it. Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And really, even in the well-being and spiritual space, and everyone says, elevate your consciousness. And it sounds good, and it's true, but really what consciousness is, it's awareness, right? Like what consciousness gave us, an awareness of the past, an awareness that we'll die one day, an awareness of, other people's experiences and so on, which allows us to draw more information. And elevating your consciousness, it's elevating your awareness of yourself and the world around you, and by understanding it, because I guess if we talk about tattoos, right, someone does a tattoo during their apprenticeship, English.
That's all right.
It's fine, I'm foreign.
Yeah.
Period. And they have to use so much cognitive focus and stress, and everything is so slow. And once you have created neuroplasticity and you have a little bit, it becomes way more effective. And maybe not in a tattoo setting, because maybe that's not reliable for everyone. But if you move to a new apartment you rent in, on the first night, you're not going to be able to walk through your apartment with the lights off. But if you live in there for a few years, you can navigate to the fridge without turning the lights on.
Yep.
Because you know where things are.
Yep.
So you don't have to like tiptoe around and have to touch everything. And I think that's really what awareness is, an understanding of yourself and your environment is.
Yeah.
Just allows you to navigate through darkness with so much ease and not feel frozen by it.
Well, confidence is born from knowledge. Right, and also, take that at a puerile level. Yes, over time you learn exactly where you're not going to stub your toe, because the first night, if you hadn't put the light on, you'd have stubbed your toe, right? And then your knowledge, your ability to walk in that dark, right, comes with time and effort and remembering and all of that. So that's the fucking same as everything, right? I want to say something and it's completely disjointed, but right, so the ability that people have to sell you little tidbits of fucking information that will then suggest to you that if you watch this you will become better, that's salesman one-on-one. They're fucking selling ice to Eskimos, spinning yarns, right? What everyone needs to understand is, and you are a shining example of this without blowing smoke up your ass, is that if you fucking work for something and you work to understand you in that situation and others in that situation, that work creates you as a fully furnished, fleshed out human being in that situation. There are many situations you will get through, but you have taken every situation you've put yourself in, because it seems to have been a conscious decision, yeah? And you've learnt how to adapt, manipulate, move, right? For yourself, understand limitations and then push through them. And without your work and understanding and your knowledge born from that work, you would not be sat in front of me today with me believing what you're saying, right? I don't live in a world where I look at people on the internet and go, oh fuck, I must buy that. I go, oh fuck off, I've heard it all before. You, right, you're sat here in front of me, I'm buying it. I'm buying what you're selling. Now that either makes you the best salesman in the world or it just makes you real and honest. And also, I see you as my friend, so I have no reason to challenge what you do, and I've seen where you've come from. It's got to be about the work, right? It's got to be about the reality. It's got to be about you being able to drive yourself forward, not believing the little flashing lights and the blinking bells.
Well, it's even from, just bring it back to the brain and a bit of science, because usually the way I do things, because I tend to draw conclusions from experience and then peer review my conclusions with as much practical information as possible in order for me to, not fall into some hole of intellectual narcissism. Like I have to double check myself with everything. So, and also it makes it easier for me to explain things to people, because I don't need to sell you shit. I can tell you, and you can start looking it up yourself.
Mhm.
Like I can tell you the conclusion, but I realize, and this is why I never finished high school, when I would give them the answer in math, they kept doing, I'm like, but how did you get this answer? I'm like,
Show
this just
you're
makes
working.
sense. I'm like, this makes sense to me.
Hmm.
I don't want to do any of the random shit. But for some reason, fine. So what you said, which is extremely true, it can be seen in a simple way to understand how to manage the amygdala, right, which is your spidey senses. Thing that makes you, perceive stress, and you release cortisol and adrenaline, and kind of puts you into this sympathetic nervous state. That even I did this because your vision changed. You almost look like in portrait mode, like a horse with blinders on. You can't see anything else around because you have this danger. And the only thing that can keep, and the thing that keeps the amygdala in check from becoming overactive and taking over everything, is your hippocampus, the part of the brain where you store your memories. You can literally increase the size of your hippocampus through physical exercise, learning new skills, and gaining experience and perspectives. And that understanding of how things work can keep you from stressing about things all the time, because you understand what can happen and all the variables. Therefore, you have more peace, more conscious thinking for you to be the one driving the car, and having a crazy drunken monkey driving a car and you want to see just panicking all the time. Because when people say I'm overthinking, you're not actually overthinking, you're just ruminating. Most likely you have the same thoughts 90% of the time, just going back and forth. And for me, more of a visual thinking, if I think of thinking, it's like an open kind of triangle. I'm trying to find creative solutions or alternative, different perspectives. And that's really, for me, because I come from such a stressful environment where I've been, in a constant state of fear, I even convinced myself that I can't have feelings, and professionals told me that I'm a sociopath with good intentions, but it's not. I'm very happy in my relationship, and I have the thing that made me successful as a criminal is my empathy. Is because I could understand people around me, and
people do forget that. People do forget that the reason that there are criminals who are really good at what they do is because they understand how you feel. Right? Sociopaths are great because they can just glide through and they learn that if I show this facial thing, this smile, then I can manipulate this, right? This isn't learned. Empathy isn't learned, right? Well, okay, you kind of got it. And for me, my biggest power when I was pushing that life was the fact that, mate, I get it. I understand where you're at. But I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll move forward and we'll take it here. And then I'll give you this. Putting someone in a position they don't want to be, but because I'm believing in them and buying into them, so they think they're going to do what I want. Right? Then when they fuck up, I'm going to deal with that with absolute aggression. And then tell them that it's their own fault. Because I can agree. I know what you're doing. I can genuinely feel what you're thinking. But then I'm going to fuck you with it. Pardon my language, I am. That's the way it works. That's how a good criminal works. And I've probably shown too much by that. But I don't give a shit. Because I'm not that in this point. But my empathy allows me now to do stuff that I never thought I'd be doing, running this charity thing and doing all that. Put the charity aside. Just the people that I deal with and front facing every day believe in me as the person that might be able to help them. And that, that isn't part of my ego. That enables me to walk forward and help them for real. I'm not second guessing myself. When somebody comes to me for an evaluation, be it through juggling as an addict, or be it through somebody who needs mentoring, they need me to help them look at their decisions by, basically it's friendship, right? When I'm in that, my confidence in my ability to do that enables me to do it. And I don't have to second guess myself, because if I do, that means I shouldn't be doing it. And that's not arrogance, that's whatever you said.
Well, I think it's competence. And yes,
competence.
Also when it comes to empathy, it's something that is developed, right? Empathy is a result of our mirror neurons, which humans have more than most species, and until like 50,000 years ago, before we developed language, that's the way we communicated with each other, through our understanding of facial features, body language, movement, and that visceral understanding of the human experience and having shared experiences that are similar allows us to now almost mimic, to a certain extent, the mental state someone is in order for you to then use your prefrontal cortex and apply that visceral line of information to make a decision that it's applicable to their situation without a word being said. And that can be developed through having your own experiences and shared experiences, and most importantly, something that most people just don't do anymore: listening to understand, not listening to respond.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely that. Yeah. He says it better than me.
Yeah, he does. But
he does, but that's all right. And I fucking love that. Do you know, the thing that comes as well, that we shouldn't be afraid of either, is you're not necessarily looking for validation when you're doing things, but your knowledge, your onward seeking knowledge, you should never just rest going, I know this. And someone puts in a different concept on something you think about that you haven't looked at before, that expands your knowledge, right? So you're then the ability then to look at your knowledge that you brought in, right, and try and understand it and move it forward. That drives me now. That thirst to know what's happening in a situation is really healthy for me as a human being to grow. And I see growth as knowledge ingestion, you know, but also, you know, you've just said it, to listen, yeah, to learn rather than to be right. Because then you can listen to go, yes, but I know, and I don't give a fuck what I know. Listen to the man who does know something. Do you know what I mean?
It's not just that. I think it's just getting enough puzzle pieces. Like the puzzle of the way I look at problems and things, it just requires a lot of pieces, and the more pieces I collect, the more clearer I can create an image. Yeah. So depending on, you know, you saying things in your way, you saying things in your way, although you're saying the same thing, because you said it different, it just creates a new perspective, that when I now find someone that might have a similar pattern to you, I can apply that relatable language in order for them to feel seen and have a genuine interest into engaging, rather than me jerking off my ego and being condescending, going into, you know, buzzwords and words that make me sound cool. And I think that's ultimately, you get enough validation from your brain to neurochemicals by doing a good job and being grateful for the positive impact that you have. I think if it's about ego-seeking validation, it's like Coke. Like, it's, you know, there's no amount of followers that are enough, there's no amount of compliments that are enough. And this is, I think I said it before and I'll say it again, the best advice I have for people that do shit online is to not care about positive comments. You cannot allow yourself to care about positive comments, because now you have to care about the negative ones too.
Yeah. I mean, that's an absolute. We don't get a lot of comments.
We don't know, positive or negative. So, but then I don't look.
Also,
I don't look at the numbers either.
I do know that at some point there was, I think it's around season 3. I was like, well, we're not getting 50 million, you know, views and all of that, and I'm in such a better place because I get to talk to you. I get to talk to you. I get to talk to all these people and these things. And if someone doesn't watch it, who gives a fuck? Because I get to do this, and that for me means that. If we're in the right place and it means something to me, then whoever, whether there's 2 people or whatever, right, there's other people to some level joining in, listening to what we're saying, finding out our information, and then maybe learning, maybe growing, maybe just entertained at some fucking lunatic talking about their past, you know, which is great, which you and I have both done on this very podcast.
I think it's one thing that will, keep you miserable is having the real arrogance of thinking that you can control outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's just, entitlement is premeditated misery and resentment. And really the reward, even if we look, again, bringing neurotransmitters into the play, dopamine is released in the planning stage and on the startup process as much as possible. So the doing part, the experience itself is rewarding. And the fact that you've done it, and I'm just grateful that I've done it, the feedback and social validation element is irrelevant, because if you bring in drugs again, your drug dealer will have a degree of control over you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you depend on your dealer validation to be an external source, they will have a degree of control over you. So do you want your, to start selling things about your character and so on in order for you to be able to buy the drug, to cheapen yourself as an individual, to seek validation? Are you willing to be controlled about these external sources, considering that you have an understanding of human nature, knowing that our opportunistic scavenger approach, that if you want to believe in Disney, that humans are these kumbaya type of creatures, please show me a time in history where that ever happened. Because our ruthlessness and our opportunistic scavenger nature is also the reason for our success. If you think even on a human level, Neanderthals had a bigger brain, bigger bodies, way better adapted to the environment. That's why we got rid of them, because we're weaker than them.
Yeah.
They were way too well adjusted to the environment, and that made them complacent, and therefore we overtook them. Our weakness was
Our strength.
our strength.
Yeah. That's just the truth of the matter. What happens when an enemy comes in to threaten you? You either get taken over or you take them out. You know what I mean? You have to. That's the way this stuff works, and this conflict that we live in.
And also, because this is something I'm very passionate about, because I don't get bothered by comments, but the only one that actually bother me is because I do tend to roast people back. I love when people send me some hate comments because I can have some fun.
Yep.
And I get these nice people. Oh, you shouldn't mind them. You should just ignore them. I'm like, why? Why? Because I know that person will go to the next person. They might actually be vulnerable and affected. And when they go and see that no one's willing to stand out for something, is that famous quote, like, the world is suffering not through the deeds of evil people, but through the inaction of good people.
Yep.
And at the same time, this bullshit about being nice and understanding to everyone and not being confronting is a self-oppressive mechanism. Because I'm observing it in people, and usually the nicest people are the ones that have the biggest anger outbursts and get burned out and all of that. So they definitely like hurting themselves. And the important part is that the resilience that comes with you asserting yourself in a conversation and having this degree of like disagreeing. Now I'm taking it personal, but being able to not just say things that I want you to hear and kind of just challenge that. The ability to maintain and not let atrophy the discomfort that comes with a bit of challenge, that ability also is extremely applicable on being able to stand out and confront your own instincts. That's why I say protect your peace. This is not just be peaceful, kumbaya.
No.
It's an element of this has to be protected, and often protected against you. But you don't get the practice. Like if I'm willing to let you go with, crossing boundaries and being inappropriate or sucking that in, then I have a lot of justifications to let me go with it, because I set a precedent for it. right? Because if you think of how our courts work and everything else, you can get away with some, well, once a precedent is being set, you can always use that as a reference, as an excuse. So if you keep letting people go, and because you are just a coward, that cowardness or lack of bravery, and arguably something I said today online, is it takes bravery to be happy. Like, the prerequisite of happiness is bravery. You don't get to be a pusillanimous, I love that word, which means, cowardly or timid, and be happy. Like, that's going back to that zoo analogy of, you can be into that cage of safety where you're being provided food and even medical attention, and you're still dying. You're still just waiting to die, and gonna die sooner. Like, your ability to grow and by standing up for yourself and dealing with the discomfort is how you will evolve as a person. And accountability is the price of freedom. Like, you can't have an avoidance of accountability and avoidance of responsibility. Like, same goes with, people just want rights without responsibilities. I'm like, it doesn't work like that, because if you want other people to be responsible for you, then you have to give them a level of control over you, so you'll never feel free. It's the same as the drug dealer thing. If validation, outside validation, is what you need, those people that are now responsible to fill in this bottomless hole that you are not willing to do the work to do, now have a degree of control over you. So that's why the entitled type of, instantly gratifying, comfortable nature of our culture, people feel very oppressed despite of them being extremely privileged objectively, because they feel trapped by their own allergy to accountability.
I think accountability has to be all. And also, if somebody does challenge you as well, don't always come at that with anger. Look at it and go, okay, why are they challenging you? What have you said that's triggered that? Because sometimes as well, it's not about being right. It's not about pushing yourself forward as like some model of, I don't know, wonders of humanity. It's about understanding. It's about maneuvering your own self to be the best that you can be. And sometimes that's about taking criticism, right? But also understanding that not all criticism is right. Also, life is not about
you are 100% correct there. And a simple example will be, if I start making fun of your blue beard, you wouldn't be bothered by it, because I'm like, oh, it's a crazy person, I don't have a blue beard, right? So the only way that criticism or comments can really affect you, if there's a part of you that believes it's true. So if you now have just been given a shortcut into introspection, if you get triggered by something that someone says, because now you realize a chink in your armor that now you get to explore. It's the same way that if you want from a salesman or like a criminal type of, if you want to make a compliment effective, you have to observe what someone cares about. Like, giving you a compliment about your eyes might be irrelevant because you haven't worked for it. If I see that you put more attention into your outfit, into your shoes, into the work that you do, and really observing that, complimenting that, has a real impact of you. It's not superficial, because essentially that's what love is. Love is not a fucking feeling. There's feelings like that come with it, but love is a practice based on awareness of someone, or what someone needs, or what's important to them, and acting according to that. You don't have to say I love you, you just have to do the things that are aligned with what someone needs or what's important to them, and they will feel loved. There's no amount of words that will replace that. And same goes with self-love. Like, if you want to feel love for yourself, you just have to act like you love yourself by taking consistent actions aligned with what you need and what's important to you. And understanding the distinction between what you need and what you want is not always the same thing.
That's very true. Okay, I've just had the flag, which means that we've been talking for way over an hour. And that flag means that we have to stop. Sorin, I love the fact that you came back. and you talked to us and you talked about your truth, and also showed that it's possible to work on yourself to the point where you can have an understanding as rich as yours. And I think that's amazing. And I want you to know that when you talk to me on this, I still have that flash of panic that I'm not quite intelligent enough to understand what you're saying. But today I bought into all things we talked about, and I see the power that you have created for yourself through the work. And I think it stood by the fact that from the beginning of when I changed, it showed me that if I'm looking for the quick, easy path, it's not going to mean anything. If I look for the path that takes work, takes ability to push through, and also if I'm trying to find understanding, it's more about listening than it is about being right. I think what's important to me from these conversations we all have is to find different people's truths, different ways of understanding, which in the end can give us all growth. And I think we've done that today.
I'm very thankful, and I just can say one little thing. I tend to have more trust in people that seek the truth and distrust the one that they say they found it. And ultimately, that's where I'm saying that my passion and my pursuit is trying to understand and trying to apply my different perspectives to things as a way to help people have one more unique perspective that's not necessarily influenced by academia or anything else like that. I think it's as soon as you think that you know stuff, you just stop learning.
Yep.
And that's just unhealthy. I think that's why people are so dumb nowadays, is because is this glorification of I know stuff and Google is there, but having a lot of information and little understanding of how it's been applied and how it develops in the real world is like constantly carrying a giant sack of books on your back, and a big reason for a lot of anxiety and overthinking and so on. So I am very happy to say that I don't know a lot of stuff. The more things I learn, the more I realize how little I know, and that for me it's exciting, because I have a reason to keep going. I think understanding that the only destination we have is death, and kind of just trying to like enjoy each leg of the journey and realize that every time I discover something, I also realize how really getting what you want requires you experiencing the opposite. In order for you to learn something new, you have to be willing to feel stupid. In order for you to get physically stronger, you have to go push to the point where you feel weak. And I think someone said, and it's a good place to end it, a few years ago at an event when I said, I feel very uncomfortable in like groups and this is not my thing. Well, I have to be here. I'm like, why would you do this if you feel uncomfortable? And so like, I lived an uncomfortable life, and I can be uncomfortable for the right reason, because that's how I grow. Yep. Like, I can't just do the things, I'm like, oh, I know this parts, and I can settle into my, and I paid a price even this year. I'm like, I can really cruise to the rest of my life without really having to challenge myself, because I'm already 10-15 years ahead of my peers, and I could just vibe. And then it made me depressed, because sorry, one last animal analogy on
there's got to be one
on depression. It's just the wolves in the forest, right? If you think of forest where wolves were taken out, usually the deer tends to reproduce at unsustainable rates. They then compete for limited resources. Sickness tends to spread, and the whole ecosystem collapses, right? And really, the presence of the wolves tends to make the herd stronger and keep evolving in the ecosystem going. And since humans have removed a lot of the predators from our environment, nature has placed one inside us. Because similar to, the wolves that tend to go after the sick, weak and divided, depression tends to go after the same. And looking at it as, of something that we have to outpace, because we have an understanding of what we can experience more out of life, and it's just a natural predator that's placed in us in order for us to maintain pace through life, because it's based on our perception of what we can do. And funny enough, most of the cool shit I've done in my life, it's a result of me trying to outpace my depression. And every time I try to linger, I'm like, I could chill. I guess that wolf inside has an expectation of me to continue growing and pushing myself. So although it's a part of what you said in terms of a desire to grow, it's also using the reality of the darkness in my brain also as, okay, if this is happening and it's unavoidable, I'm constantly going to have this, following me around the forest. The best I can do is just outpace it.
Keep one step ahead, sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, let's play.
Yeah.
And see, and somehow it's just most of the success and things that I do is this kind of outpacing thing. Like getting fuel to achieve your goals doesn't come from positive thinking.
No.
It doesn't. It just comes from an element of pain, fear, anger, all of these things. They're not negative emotions. There's no such thing as positive as negative. It's our perception of it. And you can perceive them as negative if you want to be drawn back by them, or you can perceive them as fuel.
Yeah. Fuel's a really great word for that. Because, however you spin it, if something's chasing you, you're either going to die or you're going to run faster. I tell you what, that was cool. Listen, 50 and Coping, we're staying where we are, we're doing what we do. I hope Sorin will come back. We'll talk again. That's amazing. Right, we will see you next time.